Glyn Roberts has farmed this land for nearly 40 years. These days he's also president of the Farmers' Union of Wales. Cwmeva Valley is home to 13 farms where a month can pass without a single word of English ever being heard. It is the essence of rural Wales, a world in which subsidies from Europe make the difference between a livelihood and poverty, a place where sheep may safely graze and where the landscape steals your breath away. Glyn Roberts' stone farmhouse surveys it all. Despite the beauty, he's deeply worried about the future.
A hard Brexit could have a devastating effect on our future of agriculture. Without agriculture, there wouldn't be nobody here, and if nobody was living here, we would lose the Welsh language and the way of life in this area.
He recites a traditional verse that says it all.
A lonely valley amongst the roaring hills, a heaven for the birds and the singing of the cuckoo, a beauty so rare. For this vale I do live.
Heading south, we pass one of so many flooded valleys. This one inundated to supply Liverpool with water. The village of Capel its school, its church, its farms and houses lie beneath. The graffiti says simply, "Remember Celyn." The lost village has become a rallying cause for Welsh nationalism. The acclaimed musician Gweno sings in both Welsh and Cornish. She's always believed in an independent Wales. Her music is not only popular, but lyrical, passionate and political.
Well, that was interesting with Cornish, because obviously we're Welsh.
Latest polling finds 25% of the Welsh people say they would vote for independence. Gweno says young people are proving more interested in the idea.
I see a lot of pro-independence expression from younger people who have grown up with a devolved Wales. So they don't really have the same hang-ups, perhaps, as people pre-devolution, and so independence is a natural next step.
But that next step is not separation.
What I find frustrating in the conversation is when people talk about separatism, because it's not about separatism, because we're on an island. You know, we can't escape from each other, but it's about changing the dynamic of our relationship, having independence for us to have an equal voice within the UK. It's just going to help Wales flourish.
We reach Cardiff's Dar ul Isra Mosque, emblematic of the diversity that South Wales enjoys. Omar Hamdi prays, a Muslim brought up in Wales of Egyptian parentage. Later he explains Wales's embrace of the other.
The Welsh instinctively identify with the underdog because of Welsh history. So if you're from a poorer country, or if you're a refugee, or if you've had some bad luck in life, instinctively I think Wales sort of embraces you.
He also embodies the change of attitude by younger people on independence.
People who before would have treated that like absolute cloud cuckoo land have now started saying,
This is a journey you've been on yourself.
So when I was growing up, I didn't really identify that much with sort of Welsh nationalism with a capital W and a capital N. I think part of that was, well, if they feel like this about English people, imagine how they feel about Egyptian people. You know, it's a pretty reasonable question. I think as things have changed, I've started to think that this isn't just an interesting abstract idea, but things can change. Because it feels like everything is up for grabs. Everything is changing, everything is in flux. So suddenly, Welsh independence is not even nearly the wackiest thing that you can discuss.
Cardiff's docks speak rustily of economic change. Steel and coal are beginning to fade. In their place, breakthrough tech companies are taking root.
We're producing these wafers right now.
One such is IQE. More spotless than any clinic, you almost hesitate to breathe. The chief executive brandishes a priceless object he calls a wafer and talks of the microchip components this plant manufactures.
Wales was leading the first industrial revolution. I think something like 30% of the coal and steel came from South Wales. I'd like to see it leading the fourth industrial revolution in terms of compound semiconductor chips and compound semiconductor technologies.
Are you, in a sense, sowing the seed of something so interesting, so important and so futuristic that it could perhaps persuade people that they wanted to go it alone?
Perhaps I see this as an engine for the UK as a whole, because I'm very passionate about the union myself. We're a global company, so we have manufacturing in many different places in the world, and it would obviously depend upon what the economic situation was and the economic policies were. We can switch manufacturing to different places, but we have built this as a real flagship in the UK to serve world markets.
Sitting amid the Victorian charm of Penarth Pier, I press a leading economist. Could an independent Wales ever survive?
At the moment, Wales has a deficit on its budget of something like 12 billion. GDP is only about 65 billion, so you can do the maths. It's a large proportion of GDP. And the trade deficit is of similar magnitude. So it will take a long time to get that tax base and that economic base up to the level that it could support independence.
There's the fear, too, that even the limited powers that Wales does have today will be lost after Brexit.
There's a grave concern that with Brexit, there's going to be an attempt to roll back on devolution in various respects. Wales has had considerable power over how it spends structural funds, for example, coming from the EU, whereas the noises out of Westminster are that these funds are going to be controlled from Westminster.
Well, I was going to ask whether an economist could allow himself to be an optimist or a pessimist, but it seems to me you've already answered that question.
Well, in the near term, unless we get a much closer deal with the EU than Johnson is shaping up to do, the near-term outlook isn't good.
Far away, back on their farm in North Wales, the pigs are at play with Glyn and his daughter. For them, whoever wins this election will have their fate and that of many others in their hands as they set about resolving Brexit.